The queen is feeling kind of queasy. Here's a look at the Hiya toys. AVP Alien vs. Predator. The battle-damaged alien queen. Exquisite mini. Exquisite Mini is a new standard setting series for 1/18 scale, featuring super articulation action figures under Hiya Toys. Before we get a closer look at the battle-damaged AVP Queen, I'd like to first thank the folks over at Hiya Toys that did provide this sample that we could have a look at in this video. I'm going to go ahead and measure her. Now, right now, I have her freestanding. Thank goodness she does have actually the wireframe tail, so she's sort of right now resting on that. Long term, though, I will be bringing in the display stand for not only this review, but also the way I'm going to be displaying her after the review is done as well. Grabbing the tape measure, I'm going to measure to the very top of her head based on the configuration I have right now. And the battle-damaged AVP Queen is about 6 1/4 inches in height, or roughly 16 centimeters tall. Now, the battle-damaged alien queen is a heavy retool of the AVP Queen we've already had a look at. So I'm going to actually slide this one over, and whilst she's still resting on her tail, let's bring in the other alien queen we've looked at before. You can see, yeah, the same bodies. Changed some of the aspects, like the puncture wounds and the acid marks left on the top of the crest. It's very much present here on the battle-damaged alien queen. And then she's also got a little bit of airbrushing of the lighter green added in there as well for the rest of her body. I'm also going to bring myself in a display stand. You already know where this is going to be going. I'm going to also bring in the alien queen that came from Aliens, well, the Aliens movie. And I'm bringing that one in so as well you can see, like we did before, that the Aliens version of Queen, the one that we had first gotten, is a lot smaller of a figure. A little more flimsy, a little more fragile. And of course, let's not also forget, it took a lot more effort to get the spikes on the back of her torso in. The battle-damaged Queen does come included with the same things that the earlier Queen came included with. Not one display stand, but rather 4. Eye brackets that can connect all those stands together. A post that's going to attach to one of the pegs. We're going to talk, I have some sad news about that. That's actually going to be the thing that holds most of the weight of the Queen upright. And she comes included with various links of her tiny little chompers that go inside of her mouth. Backtracking all that and starting where we started things talking about, the figure comes included with multiple display stands. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but actually 4. I haven't attached the 4th one, but they all attach the same way. Generally for the Queen, I only really use the 3. I don't really rely on the 4, but you can attach all 4 really if you want to. Ironically enough, the one I left behind was darker than all the other ones, but I'm sure it will vary, as I'm probably sure that somebody's gone in and just airbrushed these with the silver. This one just didn't get as much of the silver, but all of them have the pegs. And on the bottoms of these, I've already taken the liberty of using the eye brackets to attach 3 of them together. But you have enough eye brackets that slot into those little open grooves that you can go from 1 to 2 to 3. And again, just taking the 4th one, you can attach them all together, depending on how many stands you want to put together to hold the Queen. I mean, she really does stand on her own. It's not something I would really recommend when you're picking the Queen up for yourself to display her without the use of a display stand. While she has the means right now, I think the weight of her eventually will start loosening the tops of her thighs, because of course all of the weight is resting against the top of the thighs as well as the wireframe tail. You definitely would want to think more long-term plans and definitely use the display stands. The display stands are also good with this version of the Queen, because this version also does have peg holes on the bottoms of her feet. The original Aliens Queen didn't come included with those peg holes, so you had to rely on only just the post alone to keep her upright. Now with these new Queens, I'm glad to see that they actually are using pegs on the bottoms of her feet, so now you can simply just attach her onto the display stand and have the figure that way. Now, I would do still one better. Don't just attach her by the display stand. I know I certainly did that when we had to look at the original Queen, the original AVP Queen. I mean, for all intents and purposes, you can have the Queen on that, and that's more than enough. But to do, though, one better, just attach the bottom, just the clear, that little clear post. And you can use that sort of helping to stabilize the figure. I'm not doing it 100% right now because, again, I have some sad news. Just putting the Queen down here for a second. Being that this is clear acrylic plastic, when you are putting it onto the peg here, you have to be really careful. Now, I thought I was being careful, but I guess the amount of pressure I put on this immediately, it did actually buckle and crack the end of this. When you are putting this onto the peg, I would most recommend that you just twist it slowly to get it onto the actual post and not just force it down. I may have even put too much pressure on it right away, and yeah, it did crack the bottom of it. It's still going to work. It's still going to help to hold the queen upright, but I would definitely say be careful when you are using it. And of course, between that and the pegs that are located on the top of the stands, you sort of have to use the 3 to keep the queen balanced. Now, I'm not doing it right now. I'm not fully committing to showing you what it looks like right now, because of course we are going to be looking at the queen separate. So we're going to go ahead and move those out of the way. The other thing that comes included with the queen that was present before is also, again, the 2 different links of the smaller jaw that goes inside of her mouth. I think I can actually do a better job of showing you this time around. It was a little harder, a little darker to show you with the other AVP queen. But I don't know if you can see it. There's a hole right there. This post sits right inside that mouth, and it's actually a lot higher than I expected it to be. But it sits inside, and actually when you are putting it in, there's a specific shape to it. I don't know if you can actually see it or not, but it's not a full circle. In fact, it's a half circle. So again, when you're putting it in, there's only one way to go. And that's what it looks like with the longer one, and then there's a shorter one. Now, I really don't ever decide to display her with the shorter one, because if it's too short anyways, I'm just going to leave it out altogether and just have the mouth closed. But if you didn't want to have the longer version, again, it just plugs into that hole that's provided just underneath the top of the jaw. Let's go ahead and remove that right now. One thing I also did notice here about the battle damage queen, like the one we looked at earlier, is that the top of her head is loose. I have heard from some of you guys that watched the other review of the AVP Queen that the ones that you had picked up is also loose too. Let me know if if anybody has recently picked up this figure. Let me know as well if you have a loose top head. I don't know really what's making it so loose. It looks as if it's not even actually pegged properly. I don't know whether it's just sitting on top of the actual joint and not even actually attached to it. But either way though, the top of that head is loose. It's a nice detailed head. You can see that. I'm just going to bring in the other queen so we can show the difference between the two. Go ahead and grab her right now. The heads are the same. In fact, many of the similarities between the molds you'll see are very much commonly the same, except for the top of the crest. The top of the crest has had some serious retooling done to show the actual puncture wounds that left behind from the aliens trying to free her. Heads, though, are exactly the same, short of the fact that this new battle damage queen slightly has a lighter coloring to it. She's not as dark the navy and dark the black. It almost seems like you can see a little more of the translucency on the plastic of her head sculpt that you could before when we looked at the AVP queen. But again, like some serious retooling has been done here. The crest almost appears to be slightly smaller, and I think a lot of it is just for the fact that there's all these parts that have been pulled and broken away here. There's all these neat little cracks, and as you can see, some nice battle damage. Let's actually just move this queen out of the way for a second here. Not dropping some of the things in the process. You can see, yeah, there's some really cool looking damage left behind here from the aliens trying to free her. You know, it would have been fun as well to get the battle damage queen to come include like the shackles and actually the brace that holds her up. Maybe that could be something that Hiya Toys could release down the road. An imprisoned version queen, simply just using the existing mold that we already have right now, but actually put her in the shackles and the restraining collar that she has in the movie. I think would be very cool to have on display. But still, though, we have some interesting looking battle damage. Still, we have present the blue and the black, but all in there is all this fluorescent, almost like light yellow. It's very, very interesting way they've done this. Again, most of the tooling has been done here. When we get to the rest of the body, though, most of it is just paint applications. You can see, like, for the mid-carriage body, for example, like the rib cage, it's only really just been added that color. It doesn't look like there's any damage done here. The only part that I think could have actually used some additional paint, not only is just the rib cage, but also in the hands. Her hands are shackled in the movie, and even when we see that scene of her being freed, there's a lot of real damage and paint that's a lot of the acid blood there found around the wrist area, and is nowhere here found on the battle damage version of the Queen. In fact, other than just the little part that they've actually painted on the top of the thigh, nowhere really anywhere be found other than just the top of the thigh does she have battle damage. The tail seems pretty still intact. The lower legs are also intact. But again, like when we see it in the movie, she's kind of getting the attack from the top here. The rest of the body would make then some sense that she's going to be a little more cleaner than the rest of the body. This is really where most of the impact is actually happening here. And it's nicely replicated here from Hiya Toys. But again, like one thing that's very, very obvious when you see the two figures is that the bodies are exactly the same. even like the damage that's done on the legs are, again, more cosmetic than anything. They haven't retooled anything when it comes to the rest of the body, which is fine. I don't think that they had to necessarily do it. As long as it's here, here's where it counts the most. One thing also I did mention, at least in the other earlier queen, is that all of these spikes, something that was really plaguing the Aliens queen, are already attached. So you don't even have to worry about that. If you were looking still to get in the market of getting an Aliens queen, I would just honestly say, don't even worth picking up the Aliens queen unless you really want to get all of them. I would beeline it directly right to get the AVP queen, or again, like the battle damage version, if that's something you'd prefer instead. For the articulation here on the battle damage alien queen, it's going to be the exact same as the one we looked at before. The mouth does open and close. What's funny is actually the top here is loose, and yet the bottom of the jaw seems very tight to close. She does have, like in the movie, the whole shifting part, the whole front of the crest actually slides forward. It's actually more there so that it slides back to reveal her mouth underneath. The top of the head is on a mild ball joint. The bottom of the neck is also on a ball joint too. It rotates all the way around, well, somewhat all the way around. The arms rotate back and forth this way. There's a hinge out as well, so you can take those arms that way. There's a single hinge in the elbow. You can rotate the forearm back and forth, and the hands also rotate all the way around. These smaller hands, like before, are also on ball joints, so you can rotate those. Now, these actual wrists don't rotate. They're all one mold, and the only thing that's actually articulated is the part attaches to the undercarriage of her body. Then for the back of the legs are on hinges, so you can rotate them back and forth this way. You can hinge them out also as well. The tail, of course, is on a wire frame, so you can bend that back and forth. But then when we get to the legs rotate back and forth, being a hinge in there, and then there's also a hinge at the back hind of the leg. Now, she is also missing the high heel. This is something we noticed here when we looked at the AVP version of the queen. The Aliens queen did have the high heel, or the Aliens queen had it. The AVP does not. As you can see, this part's missing. But she does also have articulation there, also in the feet. This queen, I can only, again, speak for the one that I have in front of me here. Can I actually get her on her tail? Maybe I could. This one, I can only speak for the one I have in front of me right now. I did notice that her legs are slightly looser than when we looked at the AVP queen. Can I get her to stand? Somewhat. I really want to stress again, use the display stand. That's what it's there for. But I did notice that her legs are a little more on the looser side than when we had a look at the AVP queen. It may have something to do with the fact that they are using the mold again. But again, I really like the idea that they didn't simply just go in and phone in the additional paint. The paint obviously is present there on the ribs. It's present there on the thighs, and also on the bottoms of the neck area. But obviously right here, they would have had to have seriously retooled it. There's damage done, of course, in the movie. It has to also replicate that in the figure. And I think Hiya Toys has done a really nice job. Short of the fact that I think when it comes to like the wrist definitely needed to have some additional coloring added in there as well. But overall, a really nice looking battle damaged alien queen. If that's the route you wanted to go, I think they've done a really nice job. Hiya Toys has, that is. For the final looks here of AVP Battle Damage Alien Queen, I did rely on another Hiya Toys Exquisite Mini of an alien, though it's not one from AVP. You may notice by the ribbed top of its dome that it's actually an Aliens Warrior from Aliens. But it's going to be good enough for the time being until we eventually have a look at those AVP aliens that we'll be looking at in upcoming reviews. This is one way, first of all, to also show you the scaling of just how much bigger the queen is to a regular aliens, but it's also to replicate the scene somewhat of the aliens trying to free the queen by having to puncture her, unfortunately. All this damage resulting on the top of her body. She did free herself, but it didn't come at the price. It came at the price, unfortunately, of some damage to her body. Now, taking this existing mold, I think Hiya Toys personally could take and reuse this mold maybe 2 more times. Taking maybe the original AVP that doesn't have the damage to that queen, and maybe giving it a frost look, a frozen version of the alien queen, and then going one step further, and perhaps maybe too big of a box to be thinking outside of. I wonder if perhaps that Hiya Toys could release a shackled version of the queen. Now, of course, it would have to involve them in creating an entire framework that goes around the figure's body. And of course, you would have to have that collar piece, the main brace that actually holds her upright, and shackling her arms. It would involve, of course, a whole lot more plastic, a whole lot more tooling, and it would increase the price point of it but it's one that I would certainly invest into if Hiya Toys considered to release a shackled version of the Queen down the road. What do you guys think? Is this a figure that could see maybe some mileage down the road with other releases? And is this a figure that you've picked up either for your collection or based on this review, one that you would like to add to your collection? Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at Hiya Toys that did provide the sample of the AVP Battle Damaged Alien Queen that we can have a look at in this video. If you enjoyed this review, hit it with a like. If you're loving the content you're seeing and certainly want to stick around for more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. While we right now have wrapped up the review for the Battle Damaged Alien Queen, there will be more Hiya Toys Exquisite Minis coming your way in the not so distant future. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.